Hey guys, I'm back with the next part of our e-commerce grocery app using .NET MAUI. So in our previous video, we worked on fetching the data, the categories and offers from the API, and we were able to successfully display that data on the UI. But there was one uh, not issue, we are following a different approach. We had all our images in our main MAUI projects, resources, and then images folder here. So the category name we were getting from the API, it was the image name we were getting from the API, and then we were directly using that name basically. But this is not the way we can do, because we cannot predict, or we cannot have all the category images beforehand when we ship our app. So these images cannot be part of our app, because the categories can be, let's say we created a new category or we modified some image or anything related to category, so the data should come from the API only. So we cannot have these category images in the main MAUI app for now. So what we'll do, we'll modify this to have these images in the API. And then second thing, we created this category service and then offer service. Where is offer service? So in category service and offer service, first thing we were getting HTTP client from our HTTP client factory, then we were making the GET request, then we were checking for the status code, then we were reading its content, and then we were checking the content, then deserializing the response. So this thing was common between these two services, and in future this thing will be for other services as well. So one better approach could be, we can extract out this common code to a separate method or class, and from there we'll use this. And it has other benefits as well. So for example, we can have a centralized JSON serializer options, then we can have a centralized exception handling for HTTP API calls, then we can have the token logic that can also be centralized. So all our HTTP requests, all our API requests will flow through a tunnel, and the tunnel is going to be the centralized service, so that we can handle request, response and everything from there only. So that we'll do in this video. So before continuing on this video, we reached here. So we reached here in our previous videos, so please do check the previous videos. So I'm going to drop the links of all those previous parts of this series in the description box, so please do check those out, then continue on this one. Okay, so first thing, we don't need these images in our MAUI project. So I copied these category images to our API. In API, I created a new folder, www root. Then I created a folder images, then a folder categories. So in www root, we generally put our resources, public resources, static resources, and there I created this images folder. It can have other images as well. And then to group these category images, I created this categories folder, and in this categories folder I'm having all these category images. Okay, so when we have these category images in here, so we can remove these category images, we can delete these from the MAUI projects, resources, images. Let's delete all these category images. So fine. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 and 14. Okay, let's delete these. Fine, and if we check, we should have 14 images. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14. Yeah, fine. So Now the URL, because we have these images in this path, so the URL of these images is going to be our API, which is currently on localhost colon 12345 slash images slash categories, then slash this butter underscore cheese. So all these. So now, till now we were simply returning the name of the image, the not complete path, not complete URL. So we need to pass this complete URL down to the API response. Now we have different approaches for this. First approach, we can have the fully qualified URL in the database, but we are not going to do this thing. Then we have second approach, that is when we are doing this, when we are converting it, at that time we can modify it. So something like, we'll do this select, and then we can say c goes to c dot image, then we can modify this image with this current URL, which is https localhost 12345 slash images slash categories, and then the category name, which is c dot, sorry, image name. This, then we can return c. We have this approach. Then third approach, we can have this thing directly. Let me remove this. So we can have this URL directly in the consuming side, right? So the consumer is our category service. So when we are getting this data, we can have that logic in this category model only. So when we are setting it, we can have like this, or we can have computed property, so which will be public string, let's say image URL. So we can do this thing here, this, and then image, and then we can use this image URL, this computed property, in our main page.xml. Here, where is the category? This is offers category, and here we can use that. Or if you don't want to do that, we can maybe write one converter, although it is string to string, but we can have that also. Or if you don't want to have this separate property, then another approach could be, we can convert this image, this auto property, to full property. What I mean is, we can have a full property which will be of type string, of course, image, and then when we are setting it, here, instead of this direct value, we will set this thing. So this complete URL, then this value. So now in this case, we don't need this image URL computed property. So here, from here also, we'll directly get the complete path. So these are all approaches I showed you. You can use any approach, whatever approach you feel comfortable with, so you can use that. So let me use this in this case. Okay, now there is one issue, and that issue is, we have this local host. So we know localhost does not work. I missed one slash or double slash. Localhost is not going to work from our emulator, from Android emulator to be specific. So it should be 10.0.2 and 2. After that, we have another issue. So we have this hosted on HTTPS, and for HTTPS we had to write our HTTP client handler, HTTP client factory, this explicit thing. So we need to provide our own HTTP message handler. But from here the issue is we are not directly getting the data over some API from some API. We are actually accessing this direct resource. So this will be used in our XAML page here directly. So we cannot use that HTTP message handler. This is not an explicit HTTP client request basically. So this is not going to work. So for this, unfortunately, I am not aware of any approach by which we can use this with localhost. If you guys know about some approach, please do let me know in the comment. I will definitely check it out. So what I did in this case, I uh, as I already told you, I added these images to this categories folder in this www root folder in API, and I published it, posted basically to the GitHub. And from there, if you navigate to this part-7 branch, then go to API folder, and from API we can have this www root images categories. And from here, if you open any of the image, we have this image, and if we go to this open image in new tab, now this is the complete URL. So it starts with this raw.githubusercontent.com Abhay Prince fruit veg basket MAUI part-7 and this complete URL. So we'll simply copy this complete URL, and then we'll come here, we'll duplicate this, and we'll set this URL here, and this last part of this URL butter_cheese.png, this is the name of the image. So we can remove this and we can have the value here. And now the complete URL, instead of 10.022 or localhost, will remove this and we'll use this complete URL. So from here we can get all the images, and you can modify this once we have the API running actually over some server. When we deployed our API on some server, then we can directly use that URL, then it will not be localhost basically. So we can use that, but for now we'll use this thing. Cool. So let me save it. We deleted images from our MAUI. Yes, so now all these images should come from this URL. So let's check it out. Okay, the app is here and we can see the images, and these are coming from the server, from the GitHub, that URL, and we can verify this by, let's use this image property directly in this label. If we do this, we can see this is the image URL, so raw GitHub user content and all this. Okay, fine. After this, we are using this directly if you want to have some caching, as this is an URI image, so we can do this as well. What we'll need to do, we'll say image.source, and this is going to be URI image source, and for this URI image source, the source is going to be URI, which is binding image, and then on this we can have our cache validity, not cache validity, caching enabled true. And now we need to remove this source because we are using it here, so like this. And you can control the timing of the caching, so caching enabled, sorry, caching validity, cache validity, basically you can set this to allow it to, let's say, cache it for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, for 1 day, for a week, or for a year. So it's up to you. For now we are not using this, but we are using caching enabled true. Okay, fine. So images are working. Now we'll work on the other optimization, and that is using a centralized place to have this logic. Alright, so for this, let me stop the app, and we'll use one approach in which we'll simply create a service here. In this services folder, we'll call it, let's say, base API service. Fine, base API service. And in this base API service, what we are going to do, first let me change it to public. And in here, we'll have a default constructor which will use this HTTP client factory. And from this HTTP client factory, first thing we will have protected HTTP client. We'll have this HTTP client property. And how will we get this? We'll use our HTTP client factory dot create client. Basically, the way we are creating these clients, will not do this for all classes. We'll do this at centralized place, at this place only. So we'll do this constants. Fine. Now next thing we need to change, we will use this class as a base class for our category service, first thing. And because this does not have default constructor, it has a parameterized constructor, so we need to use this. So we'll have here base, and we'll pass our HTTP client factory directly here. Now we can get rid of this HTTP client factory. So basically we can remove this, and we can remove this HTTP client factory. We don't need this now. After this, we need to use this HTTP client, which we already have in the base class, right? In the base class, we have this HTTP client property. We can use this. So let's change this like this, and we can remove this thing. Let's do the same thing for offer service. In offer service, this is also going to be inherited from base API service, and we'll have the base constructor with HTTP client factory. And then we don't need this underscore HTTP client factory variable here. We can remove it. We can remove this line as well. And this is going to be this capital HTTP client. And fine. Clean this and clean this as well. Fine. So we have at least something. Now next thing, we need to have this logic somewhere in the base class. So let's go to the base API class, base API service. Here we'll handle the API response. So let me make protected void, let's say handle API response. And here we'll have our HTTP response message. This is what we get from this get async method, right? HTTP response message. Fine, let's copy this code and have it here. Okay, now we are using await, so we need to change it to async task, and then it will return something from here, right? JSON serializer, deserialize, it is going to return something. And because we are having this method as generic, because it will work for all the services and the return type could be anything, we don't know about that. So for that we'll make it generic basically. So the type of data, it could be anything. T data, handle API response async. Fine. And instead of this, we'll simply return this, and this deserialize, this is going to be T data. Cool. And what if it did not go to this if condition or this if condition? Then we are saying that it should return something. So what it should return, we can have just return default. But the problem here is, if you check our category service, in our category service, the default In this case we were not using any default, but if you go to offer we were using this default. So there could be scenarios where we need a null as a default. There could be some scenario where we need this empty enumerable as a default value, or maybe some other value. So instead of thinking about it, assuming about it, let's get a second parameter of type t data and default value. So it did not go to these if conditions, we'll simply return this default value. Fine, we are good now. Now next thing, there could be cases we might need to uh, have this JSON serializer option somewhere else in this class, because this class, this base API service, this is going to be enhanced over the period of this tutorial series. We'll add more methods. So for this, let's have these options, JSON serializer options, as a property. So we'll use JSON serializer options, and we'll say, let's say, default serializer options, and we'll have this thing in there. So we can access this from the child class as well if we need. From derived class as well we can use this if we want. And from here in this class we'll directly use the default serializer options. Cool. Now we are going to use this thing. So, okay, well, let's do one thing. Let's move this thing as well to a separate method. Okay, let's have it, we can have it protected, or maybe we could have it as private for this class only. Maybe some derived class can also use this, so we'll use this. So we'll have protected t data, and we'll say deserialize t data, and here we'll have string JSON data, and from here we'll return this thing, and from here we'll return deserialize t data content, and this in here is going to be JSON data. So I think we are good with this thing. Now we need to use this handle API response in our derived classes. So here what we'll do, we know, so we'll say data, or let's say categories equals await handle API response async, and the type of data we are expecting from here is enumerable of category, and let's pass this response, and then default value we need in this case. So we don't need anything as default value, so we can have it as null. Right, now we'll check if we found some value for it. If categories is null, that means we didn't get anything. So in that case we can return this from here. And if that's not the case, we'll set underscore categories to these categories, and then we can completely remove all these things. Fine, this is same as before. Now let's do similar thing for offer section, and here, from here we don't have that if and else condition. We are always returning this enumerable empty offer. So what we'll do, we'll simply say handle API response async, and the type of data we are expecting from here, it is enumerable of offer, and first parameter is response and second parameter is default value, and default value is this in this case, enumerable dot empty offer. and we'll simply directly return this value. So return await this thing. Here we don't need to have that separate variable because and we can remove this. It can differ from this type. Cool. So we have everything is in place. Here also we can clean this up. Okay, fine. So let's try to run it. It should run as expected. The only thing is, okay, I am having it like this, but if you want to, you can modify this handle API response async, or maybe you can create one more method. So from here, you'll simply pass just this URL, this API endpoint, and the default value. So both of these operation can happen inside this common method only. If you want, you can do this as well, but for now I'm not doing this. Cool. Let me save everything, run API, and run uh, this mobile app. Okay, API is running. Let's run the app, and we have something, video toolbox. What is it? Okay, save, run. Okay, we are getting something. We can see these commands. So data is being pulled from our API, and we can see our offers, and we can see our categories as well. So everything is working same. Cool. So I think that's all for this video. From our next video, we'll work on this product section. We'll add couple of products. We'll have some seeding data. Then we'll have API for products, and then we'll work on a product service to fetch the products, and then we'll display those. So that all will start from our next part. Okay, please like this video, share this video, and subscribe my channel. I'll be back soon with the next part. Till then, bye bye.